I visible and audible?
Yes, visible and audible.
Thank you. Okay, so I would open my POIs at the floor to the 4 to 5 minute. Before that, you guys are free to type in the chat and I will check it by then. So please don't interrupt my speech. Now I would start my speech in three, two, one. Now, good afternoon. I bid to everybody here. I am the Prime Minister of the government team. Onto our mechanisms today, right? It must be clear that social media means a platform where visual representation is the dominant way of communications. The characteristics that define social media here needs to have an open forum, meaning that rather rely to one-to-one speaking. So what is an open forum? Such as TikTok, such as Instagram, such as X, where you can publicize your content. We are explicitly excluding public broadcast distribution applications and platforms used for communication solely via text and encryption in text, such as WhatsApp. And this also cuts out workplace software such as Microsoft Word and stuff. So visual platforms, right? We heavily rely on direct messaging on indirect messaging to sort photos and videos. Much of these private media and end-to-end encrypted. Therefore, end-to-end encryption is not our main intent and main scope of debate today. So onto our mechanisms. Social media platforms will now be state-owned and will state-owned, or the information containing of the identities must be collected under state surveillance. So it's up to the national discretion of the country itself. There are two options for that, meaning that by implementing this motion, right, state governments in outside of the house must be involved with this specific sector in this company on the process flow of the company, such as Meta that owns Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, such as ByteDance in China that owns TikTok and other MCN companies. We are preventing real names from actually being displayed on public profiles, meaning that the users just have to submit their real names and information. Real names is what we want, okay? Other from IP address, real names. The registry must remain strictly a back-end regulatory gatekeeper, meaning that the platforms now have new law enforcement. The users still can operate under their pseudonym. They don't have to open their name and publicize it onto their Instagram account. Let's say my Instagram account is called Luryi. However, my real name is called Liana. Does mean that I can still keep on texting online using the name Luryi. We will ensure that privacy from the public is maintained while accountability to the law is secured. What does it mean by national registry? National registry means that the app platform based in whatever location shall only have the right to hold the information of said nationality, meaning that through tracking the IP of the user, right, a user of Malaysia would not have to submit that information to a platform that is based in America, let's say TikTok. So how would the usage of this information will be used? The usage will be limited to extract, expose, and show in only below conditions that applies to two. First, court cases that involve crimes that are already proven to be a violation of cybersecurity law. Therefore, it needs to be open. Second, a system. We have to establish a system that is strict as the current ones for digital footprint in IP, meaning that unmasking an anonymous person's name, right? It needs a multi-party judicial warrant signed by an independent judges, exactly how like you do wiretapping and physical searching warrants right now in the world. Meaning that in the three government bodies, right, we require at least two to operate this tracking, in which will be common cyber police under the administrative branch of officers and judicial branch. Therefore, this requires warrants signed by law enforcement or agency officers along with judges I mentioned before. There's two effects. First, to ensure the government cannot arbitrarily spy on citizens and bypass any laws. Second, to prevent authoritarian surveillance. That is not our intention of the debate today. So, for storage purposes, right, in terms of storing this very sensitive information, we would mandate the government and the platform to work on decentralizing ways of verification, meaning the data is now encrypted using zero knowledge proof. Meaning that in either methods, right, the governments, right, shall be in charge of storing the information and these registries in different servers, making it impossible for hackers, if they unfortunately do hack a server, they cannot obtain all the information. It will be crypts and crypts that cannot get them any useful information. So a good characterization and a good example in today's world is China. China's major social media apps such as Weibo, such as Douyin, has already implemented this system, which their influencers must show their legal name, must submit their legal name, their legal ID, and their IP address to the government and to the platform itself. Let's say the characterization of today's case, right? We must focus on China and US because since these two are the major powers with popular dominant social media apps online right here in our world in 2026, therefore we will mainly debate within this scope and analysis. So the burden of proof of both sides is to prove that which side could eliminate threats online that are very currently evident right now and to protect our stakeholders, which are the following three: online users, platform of social media, and three, the government itself. The status quo, there are three things to meet today. First, the bot takeover. Right now, right, there is a very evident trend of the rise of dead internet theory, which will be elaborated in my speech later. A majority of online content is now all run by very synthetic forms of AI by organizations that intentionally want to create a specific narrative online that want to dominate the narrative and indoctrination of the people. Number two, algorithms and automated systems are now flooding social media with endless fake posts and engagement designed to trick users and manipulate trends. People now can no longer tell if they're talking to a real human or fake account, pushing scams and propaganda and advertising to a very extent that it already goes past law. Number three, there is zero cost for fakes because creating millions of fake profiles right actually cost nothing. As most of social media platforms right now in our world will not care if you as a singular individual person open over 10
Point.
accounts. Before I go on, any yours?
Oh, yeah. I forgot to
Yes.
say, yeah. May I ask, if you were to give the government so much power towards the privacy of them, why would you make sure the government will exploit it?
Okay, so as I said, right, given the power to the government is to let them ensure that these platforms will not use the information, this sensitive information, to do something illegal. And the government does not have the power to use these information. They just have the power to collect it. By using it requires, it's already mentioned in my mechanism, I will not repeat again. So now onto my point, right, will be one, to protect the real users in two layers. Real users from synthetic bot farms and real users from users with criminal intent. Onto the first one, real users from synthetic bot farms. That internet theory, meaning that a vast majority of activity today online is automated activity manipulated by an algorithm for the purpose of manipulating the population for their said purpose. Automated bot networks, street farms, and AI-generated synthetic personas account, right, is actually a dominant force on online right now. These networks will actively manipulate in your public discourse and cause public trouble. A great example is just the passing Negeri Sembilan local election, where AI content often featuring a woman or a man sitting in a suits and sitting very professionally like a geopolitical speaker podcast. Yet they spread blatantly false news and accusations towards the political candidates that were running for that area, especially companies such as MTN companies to China, right? This is just an example. With deep ties of connection with organizations with specific goals, they tend to use the online narrative to dictate views that can actually distort our reality. So why is it important to solve real life identification? Because right now, right, platforms rarely require verified real world identification upon sign up, allowing bad actors to hide behind their burner profiles and fake names. Number two, platforms intentionally destroy digital footprints for two reasons. First, storage limitations and chip cuts. Number two, major social media platforms, they delete connection logs, IP history, and post after short retention cycles because they want to comply with privacy regulations of said countries. Ultimately, that we argue that outside of the house can provide these protections exclusively to the stakeholders mentioned, and therefore we are very proud to propose and we are very proud to protect our users from these two stakeholders. With this, I would like to rest my case.
Thank you so much for your very good speech. And then calling leader of opposition.
Oh, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, audible and visible.
Wait, give me a second to organize my papers. If I went onto social media, Instagram or Twitter right now, and I saw that everyone is being all peaceful and there are no problems in this world, I will be quite suspicious about it, right? So, my for replies, my whole argument will be the reply to government's argument. And now here, I would like to challenge setups. First, I would like to challenge the setup is that they say that it's state-owned, but no, we disagree and we say that it's actually government-owned and it's actually nationwide. Because why is because this is important because privacy and data are like very important things for the citizens itself and it's quite large scale. And that is therefore it should be under the strongest and biggest body in the entire country, which is the government. The second piece of setup challenge is that they say they give a lot of illustrations about USA or China, but we want to say that it's actually this motion says it's a worldwide thing for every single nation in the world. And they don't include like kingdoms or they don't include like countries where there's like dictatorships and stuff. And now continuing on with the setup, first piece of only one piece of setup here. What does this national registry look like? A, it looks like it's compulsory for all citizens who wish to use this social media. And B, it looks like this is connected to all their accounts, right? Every account is linked to their own identity. What does this mean? It means that whatever you do on social media can be traced back to you, yourself, your identity, and that this is controlled by the government, right? And so let's move on to the argument. Our argument here is, how do we protect the data of the people? So what's the status quo right now? Huh? The status quo right now is this. A, the government has the government has every power on this national registry. B, and this info or data will be used by the government to track down these people in real life. Now, how does this work, right? Let's have an illustration here. For example, if someone says something on social media and then the government wants to track that down, of course they can just link it to their identity, right? And they can just tell the police, oh, can you help me find this person with this like IC or name? And then they're gonna go to your front door and they just say hi. Yeah, so that's what's gonna happen, right? So what's the problem here? The problem here is that the data of everyone is leaked to the government. It's not leaked, but you're giving it, and then they're gonna use it in some way, right? And like the government has a lot of power on this, on how social media will actually look in when they do this. Now, and the second problem here is that the government not only has the power to catch people on social media, but also influence how the social media looks like, the post or the algorithm itself. And I'll be explaining more on this later. Like it will look like a person just trying to disagree or voice out about something they want, or like just trying to organize a protest, right? But the government is able to trace it back down and just say, and silence the guy. No. And this means that they can control whatever is on the social media and take away the people's freedom of speech. Yeah. And so, why is freedom of speech important? Is because this means that the country will, and so because of this, right, many minorities who actually want to fight back or just change things in the country or make change would become scared and they'll just back down, right? Because they know that it can be traced back to it more easily and change will not happen in the country. And that's first. Secondly, now, like, there's no platform for them to just voice out their concerns or their opinions outright. What this leads to is that it leads to decreased awareness on issues in the country. Now, it will look like people are just like forced to watch things that the government like implements or what they want to speak, like whatever the government wants. And they can do this. I'll be explaining more on how they do this, how they influence social media, right? Let's have an illustration here. It would look like this, right? Yes.
Okay, so how does spreading government propaganda be exclusive to our side, since in your world, the government is also free to open accounts and spread narratives?
No. Why? Wait, can you repeat that?
Okay, thank you. So how is spreading government propaganda exclusive to our side, since in your world, the government are also free to open accounts and share narratives, dictate things?
Because they'll catch you, right? Like I already explained already, they're already gonna use this data to just link it to your real identity. Then you're gonna get the police to come to your front door and just say hi to you. Okay, so I'll be continuing on with my speech. So how the government is gonna influence the social media is by doing this. First, they're gonna be silencing selected people. Like they're gonna say, oh, this person is doing this and that. They're gonna say this and that, and I'm gonna find their identity in real life, and I'm gonna silence them, right? Or just by making a law that says, oh, you can't actually say this to social media, or we will come find you, right? Which means that they can gradually shift the algorithm or the post of social media in their favor by doing this way, in this way. And this is especially important because there are some governments in the world which are corrupt and bad and by doing this, they can just easily get away with it, right? And like, if they get away with it and they still stay in power, which means the citizens will suffer and they can't have any change because I already said for this, right? I already explained this. And this is important because actually social media is the most important catalyst for change in the world. Now, why? It's because people right now get their news, get their sources from social media. They're very reliant on social media and to stay informed about that. And so when you take away social media, these people lose their biggest tool, lose their biggest catalyst for change. And so, sorry. And so let's move on to part 2 of the argument. Why do people need this privacy, right? Because first, the people who is oppressed or harmed by the laws of the government now need a platform for them to voice out and gain support, right? And so why? It's because And why is social media the greatest tool for this? Because A, the reach of social media is much larger, right? They can find more supporters this way. And B, their voice is louder on social media. They can have more impact, and this means that it's more likely for them to call on change in the country. And for example, like an example of like being silenced is like Israel-Palestine conversations on Twitter. It's just getting deleted by the government or something like that. And so there's scientific people who just want to support. And this creates a more and by giving them the power of social media, this creates a more democratic country where people will have freedom of speech and the citizens will feel much more at ease. And so secondly, why is freedom of speech important? A, this means that the country will become more democratic, right? This will create a place where people can have their own voice and be heard correctly, and their opinions can be said freely. It will be more fair for the citizens, right? And this especially true for social media because back then it's just protest and organizing protests, but now it has the largest impact and voice because it can reach so many people, even worldwide. It means that it's the best tool for freedom of speech. And now moving on to the impacts, we only have one impact here, which is we can create a more democratic. We have two impacts. We can create a more democratic society first because A, we avoid the government to have too much power, especially in cases where the government are still corrupt and in power. And B, we let the people to have a further reach of what they want. And with that, Naren, I'm prouder to propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your very good speech. And then calling Deputy Prime Minister.
Just wait up a second. I have to retrieve my code. Just to check, am I visible and audible?
Yeah, you are visible and audible.
Okay. Now, just to begin, before I start everything, first of all, my pronouns are she, her, and I will take any POIs verbally. I will accept them verbally, and if they are inaudible to me, I will further then ask for them to be posted within the chat. Okay, is that made clear? Okay, I'll assume it was made clear. Okay, now start off. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The side opposition argues that we shouldn't focus on US and China when all platforms that are dominant in the world are currently owned by these countries. TikTok, Douyin, Weibo, Laughter, X, Reddit, do these not originate from America and China? Opposition, there's simply no point for your accusation on your framing. Apart from this, now moving on to the other points made by the leader of opposition, they've stated that whatever you do on social media can be linked directly to you. However, we are also stating that it is accessible under warrant, and the warrant can only be issued under appropriate suspicion in the first place. The opposition frames it in such a way that they describe it as the police knocking on your door based on your social media account. However, the police must first issue a warrant. They must first go under the judicial system of issuing a warrant under credible suspicion and under correct evidence provided. Does the opposition understand that the database will obviously be protected and that the information is only retrievable via warrant? Apart from this, the opposition also states that the government can control the social media algorithm. The algorithm is still according to the preference of a person. It is developed individually per account. State-owned means central government. It does not mean that any form of random government can suddenly enter it and suddenly change how everyone's algorithms operates. How this will seem fishy, not just to the users, but also incredibly unuseful in the first place. Now, moving on. In our case, as a proposition, we wish to result in a safer social media for users overall. As the government, we wish to retain some amount of anonymity for users, as we recognize distrust as something we must limit for a working and operating government. We maintain a balance between distrust by our people and trust for us, and by our people via trust for us to conduct justice well. To do so, we
Point.
specific information from the database under warrant to bring justice to our country, except
If you said this is in China and America, does it mean they have the technology good enough to trace them back down to find the people, not needing to actually have their names into their account?
okay, can you clarify, please?
If China, America, why must need name to social media account? Why can't use technology that they already have?
Well, for starters, I'm gonna elaborate on this point later on, since it is incredibly resource intensive to discover a digital footprint in the first place. Now, moving on, there's a deep issue present with attempts to application of the judicial system on the internet. An example of the judicial system applicable online. Under the defamation law of Malaysia, it includes a right for people to conduct justice to those wrongly accused within Malaysia online, as long as it fits the standards of defamation, such as publication of falsified claims. However, this law has been difficult to conduct due to the anonymity culture of the internet. A past case describing the difficulty to enact the law is the defamation of a small business in the past, harming the sale of the business. The business owners had to somehow obtain the data provider of the user and wait for the federal investigators to be issued a warrant to retrieve their IP address. If the business owners did not have this person's mobile number, if the one causing the case had used a VPN that had disguised their IP address, it would have been incredibly resourcefully intensive to enact the defamation law against them otherwise. The difficulties in enacting justice against cybercrime would have been fixed to its greatest extent without, and as the social media accounts could have a direct link to the users discoverable only under warrant. Instead of running loops around the digital footprint of a user and wasting resources on an attempt to resolve court charges that originate from the internet, a far more simple process after basic investigation into the charges of the case allow resolution without the need to perform a duck and goose chase to discover who was behind the scream in the end. Instead, using far less resources to enact the law under the judicial system on the internet. Now, moving on. People must understand the consequences behind their actions, not just in the real world, but in the internet as well. People in recent years have considered themselves safe from conducting unsolicited hate speech, from conducting cyberbullying and cybercrime without consequences. No matter how many times governments have pushed to make the internet safer for everyone in the status quo. Of course, the goal of today is to show that we provide a safer internet for everyone online, to bring the disconnected mask world of the internet with a closer awareness of action for people. This operates in a way people understand cases held against them under cybercrime would directly correlate to them if found guilty, based on the fact that they understand that their identities are held under a database and that is only retrievable under warrant, but if they were to conduct any cybercrime, it would be retrieved, and therefore they will be held accountable for their actions. So they must also be aware of how their actions will affect people within the internet as well. Now, apart from this, bots and AI accounts. Anonymity has mutated from a privacy shield into a weaponized mask for cyberbullying, as such, as mentioned beforehand. Perpetrators face zero real-world accountability, driving a mental health crisis, particularly among youth. A huge reason why these cases fail to actually be tracked down in real life. Private social media platforms have proven entirely incapable or financial incentives not to self-police. As for AI content, why is this important for us to solve via real identification? Current AI trackers are simply not competent enough. The technology is evolving too fast compared to the criminal justice system is adapting to. The digital watermarking standards easily break when platforms compress, re-encode, or strip hidden tags during user uploads, meaning although there are efforts for social media apps such as Instagram to hold whether or not the accounts are made by AI through the watermarking systems, it is easily removable, and even some AI algorithms, some uses of AI do not even include watermarks in the first place, which in the end causes a great dissonance between what we can do for the judicial system when AI is put into hands. Now, apart from this, freedom of speech is actually safe and accountable. Genuine discussions, intellectual discussions, actually thrives because of the digital public square is cleared of bad actors. True free speech is protected from the tyranny of false information when AI is cleared from the algorithms. Next, onto the democratic society. Our side is the side that respects democratic integrity. We have less false information flying around. We prevent is restored as elections, public debates, and policy discussions are shielded from foreign bot manipulation, synthetic disinformation, and industrial scale scams. With this, I rest my case. Proud to propose our stance. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very cool speech. And then calling Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, audible and visible.
All right, let me just arrange my stuff a little bit and I'll get right to it. What a wonderful world that the government lives in, that their government is confirmed to be benevolent, their government is confirmed to be all wow, all a saying that it's going to have the citizens at the best interest at hand. If the government really exists, I would really like to go there and then see for myself. Now, before getting into the debate, then a few responses to side government then. On their whole point of how the government won't be able to have these information and they won't use them for bad, right? That is the first question that we need to answer in this debate, which is why data will not be used correctly on their side. Which is okay. Number one, when you give so much power to the government, what happens is two things. Number one, to collect it is to just use it in the first place, right? Because why would you even collect data in the first place? Government cannot assert that to us that this government is wholly benevolent, that these governments will always have social citizens at the best interest. Because looks like governments will most likely be able to have the ability to buy bots or hire people to put up accounts that spread messages to certain groups, to be able to control the algorithm that what kind of things that these people see, what kind of contents will surely riled up in order to get into arguments. Then it's bad because right now when you have the system where people know that, hey, this account is confirmed to have a real life person attached to it, it doesn't exactly deter the crime from happening itself, right? Not only that, it's more likely going to look like the people have less suspicion because people by then already think that these are real people instead of people hired by the government or bots hired by the government in the first place. Then secondly, then on the point of algorithm, right, I don't think the government really knows how the algorithm is being affected in this debate, and how is it so important. And here we will tell you that because why? Because number one, how it works is government would be able to find out who you are and what kind of things you like, right? They're able to find out the environment you live in and specifically what you like because of the linking of IC numbers within that specific account in the first place. And what this looks like is being able to provide extreme cases that confirms to you feeling validated in order for you to feel that you should be able to go into your beliefs even more stronger and you should be able to go into your beliefs even more radical. And why is this important? It's because it affects things like elections, right? It affects how people view other side. It affects how the leftists view the rightists, or how people demonize other people because they don't agree with, because they've seen the things that happen online in social media as well. We tell you that the government is able to to some certain extent push towards videos or push towards specific algorithms towards the people that will affect the elections, that affect so many other things as well. And it's so much easier for government in the first place, especially if you give them this system at its core. Now, on the second argument of how these internet will have cyber crimes like AI and stuff. We do not deny that happening, right? But however, the method being that exposing their identity is not the method in the first place. What should be the method is having new laws being passed to regulate AI, such as limiting what kind of content AI is being able to generate. And because we limit the amount of content being able to generate, that is when we stop these things from happening in the first place, rather than just waiting for people to generate AI of porn, then only then do we hunt these people down, right? No, we want to solve the core problem, and that is to limit the AI things being produced, limit the generation of it in order for that to happen. So, moving on then, what does it look like in opposition's world, right? It looks like one thing. Number one, it looks like them having constant monitorings. And why? Because certain communities only feel safe when they have something that when there isn't something that's against them to monitor them, right? E.g., the LGBTQ online spaces, the Palestine support groups, right? Government won't always have the best interest in mind because of three reasons. Number one, because they want to stay in position. They want to be able to see what's going to happen within these types of elections. They want to be able to see what's going to threaten you in the first place. Second thing then is that they want to be able to maintain the general quote-unquote peace within the country, such as having centralized opinions, such as being able to push down those who threaten them in the first place. And thirdly then, and especially when you have people constantly trying to go against you, trying to constantly not coerce, trying to put you into the other side, you're more likely to want to maintain these spaces from getting out of hand in the first place, which is why you see so many cases of, let's say, USA restricting people from speaking about Palestine going to college, right? So what is the problem with their role? The problem with their role is very simple. Paranoia and deterring people from speaking out against important matters that can only be spoken through public spaces like social media. Because because it removes the safe spaces that they have spent years building, right? Especially in highly religious countries where they view specific laws differently, e.g. as stated before and again and again, Palestine and Israel. Where right now we have already seen cases where college students have already been ostracized or sent out or kicked out of the colleges or sent to jail because government managed to track them down because government managed to be able to know who the identities is and then drag them away from their homes in the first place. What is going to happen in government world is them being able to do these things even more. B then is that what they need, however, these people, what they need is the anonymity in the social media as well, where they're able to talk to each other without feeling threatened, where they're able to actually feel safe within these types of communities as well. So, what is the intention and what is our mechanism? Our mechanism is that we should be strengthening the targeted investigations, e.g., having special forces that actually track down certain accounts that have shown suspicion of crime, having specific forces that actually do the things instead of just putting everyone out on the transparency. Then why is it true that this will work? Because number one, right now we already have a lot of UN collaborations to deal with online problems like this, right? Because to some extent, both sides agree that online medias are a place with less regulation. However, a mass identity registration isn't the method as well, because we want to be able to invest into tracking linked accounts instead of IRL IC things, right? Where both sides will still have, like, let's say, like CIA agents in order to track specific things, where people then don't have to focus on so many other things that are out of their control. Second reason why this is true then, because right now we also have huge countries like USA or China or who are actively tracking your information through things like phones. So they already have the technology to be able to track down important matters if they care. So these suspicious accounts will most likely on their side just get banned and tracked at the most if it is really an important crime. That there's no need to go into a full transparency and put everyone in danger in the long-term process though. So on our side, what are we most likely to be able to have a better change in the country? Why? Because number one, people actually accept opinions or criticism on our side, right? People know that these people are able to stay anonymous. People are, especially minorities, are able to have a space where they can speak up without being threatened. Which is why government is more incentivized to fix this because they want to stay in power. Because the government is able to therefore they cannot control these people, so might as well just change, right? People who are leaders change because of the biggest dangers as well, especially with them being inundated. So for all those reasons, if you want to support a side that actually supports the whole society as a whole and actually supports that people do not get oppressed even more further, go for all.
Right, thank you so much for your very nice speech. And then calling government with
Hello?
Hi.
Am I audible and
Hello.
visible?
Yes, audible and visible.
Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the opposition teams today is deeply flawed. The points that they claim to be exclusive to our side are just as applicable to their side as well. They try to tell you that our side is living in a dystopian world. The moment that the government touches the data, right, corruption and misuse is 100% guaranteed. They treat the government's abuse not as a potential risk that we have to manage, but as an absolute certainty. They ask you to believe the courts, the independent judges, and the legal warrants will magically collapse the second this registry is built. Now, we need to acknowledge, right, that the bad actors in today's motion is the AI synthetic farms and not the governments. And we have to tackle this issue instead of whatever the opposition is telling you about. Okay, so first and foremost, the opposition is totally ignorant to our mechanism, which is a dual party signed warrant, in which not only the central government branch, but at least 2 out of 3 branches must agree to sign on that warrant in order to be used and extracted. The claim for freedom of speech and a more democratic system. So, in a world of total anonymity, it goes against the rule of accountability, right? And that is the core of freedom. True free speech requires a safe public square. When those trolls, those bad actors and bot networks can use harassment, deepfakes, and death threats without any accountability, there are 2 impacts, right? First, the normal citizens refuse and are reluctant to speak online because of the threats, right? And number 2, the loudest, most malicious actors use the fake profiles to drown you out. Your democratic view is not democratic. It just takes the loudest voice. And ultimately, right, the loudest voice does not equate to the correct voice. Plus, the government does not, I repeat, does not possess the power to arrest a person and track them down simply as you guys have stated. A real name registry does not give the police like a fast pass to arrest critics, as stated as well. Now, onto my rebuttals. Now, the opposition case is built on how a corrupt government cannot be trusted. And they describe the government as spreading propaganda through bot accounts, But we must acknowledge, right, in the status quo, according to claims by the opposition, the propaganda is already generated by governments, as bot accounts don't require a restricted database of identities in the first place, right? In fact, within our side, we can see the more benevolent forms of government that care for the safety of the people on the internet, evident in Malaysia's consistent pushes against cyberbullying and cybersecurity acts under the Cybersecurity Commissions. And Australia, in its worries of social media, acts in today's world, countries where the government can eradicate propaganda inside and outside the nation by the corrupted words of others, actively combating the corrupted bots of the corrupted nations through the discussion among social media platforms between countries, which is one of the main purposes of social media, right? And number two, they mentioned that we need to protect the data of the people because the government can misuse it. Well, in our status quo right now, a lot of social media already sells like the collected data from the users to they sell it for advertising for algorithms, right? Oh, if you interact with a lot of, let's say, makeup content, they'll show you makeup ads, right? And the algorithm, but with our mechanisms in place, this will not happen. Why? Because there is a structural separation of powers. The central state does not store your social media posts or browsing history alongside your identity. The backend registry only verifies that, oh, you are the person that's running this account. The government cannot see what you post, and platforms cannot see who you are. It is only in the case mechanism, as stated by my Prime Minister, that requires. Next, this is quite a core point of their case, which is that people who are oppressed by government needs a platform to voice out and gain support, because apparently they get more impact and are more likely to achieve change online. While the opposition assumes that only by being anonymous, then only you can build impact. But in reality, these anonymous claims of oppression are easily dismissed by the public. They can just call it fake news. They can call it propaganda against the government. It is something that is present on both sides. And according to our mechanism that's already been explicitly stated by our Prime Minister and our Deputy Prime Minister, users can still maintain public pseudonyms. Marginalized individuals that are online, they can still post online without showing their real name to the public. And we've stated again and again, their legal identity is only accessible, right, under a strict dual-party judicial warrant that you need the approval from independent judges. And on the topic of free speech, right, we need to acknowledge that accountability does not equal to censorship. Identity verification online does not dictate what you can or cannot say on social media. It only ensures that you as a person, you will be held totally and absolutely accountable if you commit any illegal acts online. Now, onto my weighing. Firstly, on scope and scale, we need to analyze mass harm versus a risk towards a smaller bubble of people. Okay, so the opposition, they mentioned that by opposing this case, that there will be risk to specific groups, right? But the marginalized and specific groups. However, as government, we need to focus on the broad and the daily societal harms that are directly affecting millions. We need to acknowledge how online crimes, right, like harassment, cyberbullying, bot-driven misinformation especially, can impact nearly every single person that uses the internet daily. The sheer volume of people that will be protected by our side far outweighs the opposition's edge cases. Why would we listen to opposition when they tell us to protect only a small bubble of people at the expense of leaving millions of ordinary citizens exposed to the risks? Number two, likelihood. Opposition. On the opposition side, so if we don't implement this, right, how does the opposition expect us to combat all those at risk? Do they just assume that these platforms can self-regulate through content moderation? Do they really think that so-called AI reporting systems can work? So we would like to say that self-regulation in these platforms will ultimately just lead to a 0% success rate. Why? Because people who claim to be anonymous, when they get banned, they can simply just create new accounts instantly, and it just creates a cycle. So the likelihood of stopping these cybercrimes without the identity tracking that our side proposes is nearly impossible on their side. On our side, however, having a national registry can actually guarantee the high probability accountability by directly tackling the root cause, which is anonymity. Okay, so number 4, onto exclusivities. Okay, so on our side, we believe that only our side can provide the exclusive benefit of the complete eradication of the bot networks that run rampant currently in the status quo. So no matter how much opposition tries to advocate for content moderation, for trying to utilize the reporting tools, but in the end, only our side's back end and the legal ID registry where we can actually make bot farms unable to operate anymore. Now, here's a summary of my team's case today and my team's mechanism. So we argue that our side has offered a realistic solution through a national registry. Number 1, we eliminate bots and uncertainty regarding the profiles, right? So by requiring the identity verification during sign up, we can immediately tackle the core issue. that floats our social media, right? Which is these bots, these AI-generated profiles, these synthetic bot farms. And a single verified legal ID can make these bot farms just impossible to operate. And number two, we can have justice hand in hand with privacy. Our model does not make everyone succumb to total public succumb to everyone being anonymous. Users can still operate under pseudonyms. So number three, we can effectively fix the enforcement gap, because right now online crimes and the victims of cyberbullying are still left completely helpless. When abusers, they utilize tools that can hide their identity, such as burner accounts or VPNs. But our policy can therefore allow enforcement to actually trace the real harms to real perpetrators without instituting a complete state surveillance that your side claims. And with that, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your very cool speech. And then calling opposition whip.
Oh my God, I'm sick. Hi. All right. Misinformation and cyberbullying is just but a small scale to what we have and what we tell you on how this can be a large scale thing where the government literally silences you, when protests and minorities and the oppressed cannot even say anything, even in YouTube, even in Instagram, or even in Twitter, where the government is there controlling and most likely giving you all of these harms here. We're trying to fight for that change, and side government is not. Now, let's look at the main clash of this debate here. The clash on which side gives better safety for the people as a whole, especially in social media, right? So what does side government tell you? Side government tell you that they are able to catch and find the scams. For example, in the AI content, where scams and AI content or false misinformation out there, and to be able to actually sort it out and catch these people who are doing this, right? So first response, we argue that in the current status quo, governments are already strictly tracking and taking down this type of information already via tracking down the digital footprint with their technology or with the CIA agents or things like this, right? Our government still have the incentive to do so and can do so effectively, especially when side government already puts in their setup where they shot themselves in the foot by saying this is literally in China and America, where both of these countries have the best technology to literally track your digital data and literally to track whatever misinformation, who are the people behind these screens doing these things in the first place, right? Governments have really high technology and security to track all these people down and literally keep what you're trying to say is that there's literally no need for you to literally keep their identities and their names towards their social media accounts inside a bank, because right now the digital technology right now for these both countries are already well enough for them to actually check and reduce this type of misinformation. So there's no need to literally destroy everyone's privacy and to literally put all their names and data into one server and bank. So secondly, people also know the same response that people also know when to look out for AI or false info in the first place, right? Like literally, I know what AI is. I know literally what AI is wrong or correct, right? So because firstly, we're living in the era of AI, right? People literally live with it every single time. You can literally tell if AI is correct or not. And right now, AI is so not advanced to the point that you can literally imitate like people to the point that people actually really believe you. And secondly, even if sure like this misinformation is really bad to the point that people actually believe it, right? We're already seeing people in social media already pointing out false information outside when like the communities are actually trying to help each other, right? This looks like in X where they have community notes actually pointing out people actually giving misinformation. This also looks like in comments where people are able to actually tell you, this is misinformation because I'm a big person up there, and this is actually false news, this is what actually happened. Social media is where people socialize and tell truths. This is not literally why people most likely believe in misinformation too. And thirdly, when you talk about cyberbullying here, you can already see schools and parents and literally the government or the educational government are also literally trying to stop this cyberbullying via education and teaching all of these people in the first place. Yes, BY.
Okay, so how do you ensure your political knowledge and economic knowledge is enough for them to differentiate between these false information, especially when we know that technology of AI is thriving?
Sure, I'm not gonna argue further, right? Let's say even if it is really true that people like grandma and grandpas actually fall into this misinformation, like you say, and it's really so bad to the point that it really hurts them, right? Why is it exclusively on your side that you gain even more harm that we're trying to say? Because we say that the government exploiting all of this data and privacy on your side is even much more worse here. Because firstly, let's look at how it looks like on our side here, right? Because the reason why people are still able to say like free Palestine and to actually protest online and actually gather people to protest online is the reason because it is simply not easy to track down every single person who said so or to every single person who wants to join this protest in the first place. Because this is because the government must most likely focus more on larger matters, like literally the things that you talk about, like false information or cyberbullying or whatever these things, right? The government has better priorities. And the government also won't like this to go and send CIA agents to go and track all these people down, especially the minorities or the press. They will just let them continue to say things inside the social media and most likely let them have their free speech here on our side, right? And secondly, what does it look like on your side? Is it we say that it's easy on your side because the names of every single social media user are literally put on a silver platter for the government to feast on and to look at here. Like literally, and firstly, this literally looks like governments have the ability to stop protests from happening via social media or social media chats or like literally silence or oppress people when they're trying to speak out about the unfair laws being put onto them when the government doesn't really want to change the laws at all, right? Especially in China where they want the people to see specific type of algorithms, where they want the people to specifically see that all these things are not going down further there. That's what they say in their setup, right? And secondly, why is it most likely that the governments want to do this, right? Because we did tell you many times before, the government wants to stay in power, and this data is literally so available to them in the first place. So that's why they'll most likely go and use it, right? Because especially when we already see how governments literally, right, the governments in the current status quo are literally using wars to like literally stop like voting for happening to them, so that the government doesn't really change. Governments really do care about their power, and governments really do care that the people like them, the people quote unquote work for them. And that was the easiest way to do it. Control the algorithm, control the data, especially when all the data is literally given to you, all these names of people. When someone say that the government is doing bad things and you want to change the government, you can literally just tell a corrupt police to just literally go to their doorstep and literally arrest him as a first place, because it's just that easy, right? Russia. Okay, so thirdly, government can also get away easily with these kind of things, right? This would look like because you don't really need to tell a CIA agent to do all these things. You literally just give money to the corrupt police and say, this is data, this is the person that's literally in the social media account, go catch him, this is his location. It's literally just that easy on your side. And we say that because of this easiness, this literally increases the harm and the risk of this type of things happening, especially in the countries worldwide where they have like corrupt governments in the first place, right? Okay, now third response, right? They talk about how the only response coming from the side government to talk about this, right? They talk about how they have the holy thing, which is how they have the dual side warrant. That's why they can literally mitigate this. They only give you one statement, they'll give you elaboration on how they will completely stop this, right? So how do we respond to this instead? Two things. Firstly, this is most likely controlled by the federal government instead, that we're trying to push the issue here. Because this type of data and this type of people, the names are really confidential. These things are most likely going to be worldwide. We say that it's most likely they're going to be controlled by the entire government, the country's government, rather than just like few state governments to be able to control all of their names and put into data, because this is like confidential privacy, private type of stuff. And secondly, the corruption is also not within one government here, right? The corruption also spreads between like the whole group of the government, or maybe like one government that can like gain much more followers to make them go into this, right? It's most likely not the dual side warrant will not be able to completely mitigate this, when sometimes maybe both of these governments are also corrupt. Both of these governments also want to stay power, and bribes and lobbying can still happen on your side, and things can still happen like that, right? They don't really prove to us why this will completely stop all these things, so I don't really think it stands. Now let's look at the weighing here, right? So, and the worst case scenario on our side, sure, we don't have safety, misinformation still runs, people really believe in misinformation, people still get cyberbullied here, right? But we say that on their side, they still have a larger scale of the problem here. And we say on our side, we fight for a better change and better work on our side. Why do we fight for better work on our side? Our second speaker already tell you on how minorities oppressed are still able to voice out their voices without being worried, right? Because we say that freedom of speech is really important here. We want to fight for a country that's able to have democracy, and that's able to have liberalism, right? Where people actually have freedom of speeches to say their worries and all of these things. The only thing that God says that people think this is false info, and I don't really know why is this. So if you want to fight for a free country where you can speak freely in social media, fight for the side opposition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for a very good speech and then calling reply of opposition.
Okay, am I audible and visible?
Yes, audible and visible.
All right, I'll start on my next line. All right. Government says that they live in the world where the government will always be on their side, that the government will always be the most benevolent and will always have the citizens at the best interest. And we have told you continuously throughout all three of us because why that is less likely to be true, and why governments are more likely to just use this information to be able to get the things that they want, which is the power that they want to be able to stay in position, right? So a few flaws on their side and a few reasons why we win judge. So number one, they fail to engage with us how exactly these minorities who face danger are going to get that safety that we already proven to you, right? What do we tell you? We tell you three things. Number one, we tell you that their beliefs will be seen as illegal, where their beliefs will be targeted by the government because they are going to be let's say they're going to be saying things that directly go against the government, or the government thinks that it's illegal in the first place. Secondly, then is that these minorities speaking out against these things like Palestine, free Palestine, who are most likely going to get arrested as well, and even more on your side when governments have now the agency to be able to track down specific people. They have the agency to be able to track down what you believe in, exactly who you are, and exactly who your friends are. Thirdly, then is that these people will always be in some point affected by algorithms, right? Where especially when you have these types of data and you set them to marketing, when you sell them to advertisements, or when you sell them to like specific posts to be posted, these people will always be influenced by the algorithms, and their beliefs will be even pushed into stronger. And we already told you how that is so bad because like these people will be demonizing other sides in the first place. Then B, then what do they tell us in response towards these three things that we tell you? They tell us that these minorities who speak out against the important matters are just talking about fake news. They say that these minorities are just spreading propaganda, which I don't really get what is exactly the reasoning in this debate and why this is not important. They need to be able to prove to us why. Secondly, then second mistake strategy called out is that they need to be able to tell us why having the national register is the sole solution to stop crime, these types of crimes from happening, right? Two tiers to this. Number one, they need to be able to prove why. Governments even have the incentive to only follow warrants. They won't make deals to find loopholes in order to get the things that they want. Because we've already seen like right now with like let's say Donald Trump, USA, China, Malaysia, there's so many corruption going on where governments are able to just simply give money and then therefore they're able to have so many other loopholes that they can go through then. Second tier then is that we also tell you that our mechanism is that it's better to just pass laws that directly target the specific crimes that these people try to tell us, right? Which is cyberbullying, which is AI, which such as, but our mechanism is to say that, bro, just target the things that limit the ability to generate illegal things that will provide a huge harm for us, these things in the first place. Like, with that, you not only don't waste so many resources on collecting these data, the governments can just like, hey, it's illegal now. So if you produce an app that actually does that, then we're going to arrest you instead of like trying to constantly like find so many other individuals and arrest them one by one. So secondly, then is that you can only use this money to just use this money to just put like things into training like FBI agents, CIA agents to actually have targeted investigations towards these people, right? And we've already told you that. So what is the clash in this debate? Then very simple, is the clash on safety. And what does government tell you? Government tell you that they are able to track crimes in the first place, but they don't tell us exactly why these are the sole reasons and these are the sole solution to be able to track crimes, right? The problem is not that government officials don't have the ability, it's just that government officials do not have the current like the focus yet in order to get these types of crimes in the first place. So they need to tell us on why the governments have the incentive and why the governments are most likely to do that in the first place. Opposition side, what do we tell you? We tell you that these government officials are more likely to use these crimes use these like specific data algorithms to be able to get the things that they want, which is like let's say catering towards specific things so that are able to get certain elections, catering towards things so that they are able to suppress the minorities who try to actively go against them, who try to stage protests that go against the government because there are more awareness things that need to be happening. This looks like LGBTQ communities, Black Lives Matter communities, or even feminism communities, where a large majority of their spaces do exist in online spaces and cannot be practiced or have a lesser chance of being able to practice in real life spaces, right? Which is exactly why we need to be able to remain the anonymity for these people as well, because social media is important in today's society, and social media is the place where we are able to garner change for the entire society as a whole. So if you want to support that, go for all.
Okay, thank you so much for a very nice speech. And then lastly, calling reply of the government.
Visible and audible.
Yes, visible and audible.
Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, good day. Allow me to evidently tell you why the side opposition has not just failed to met their BOP, but also failed to challenge our stance. The whole case of them, right, is very one-sided, as stated in our questions, right? Bad actors is the biggest clash in today's debate. It is very clear that bad actors that are causing the status quo right now, as mentioned, right, are the AI bots. They are the ones spreading the false information, and how this harms the minorities, which we have clearly engaged with your case. In an election, right, our work presents to you a clean internet safe from AI false information that is very visually confusing to the people. The government here does not have the power to operate with whatever the algorithm is used in the platforms. Also, the government cannot simply bond, assault, or arrest a person if it disagrees with their parties. The executive branch simply does not hold this power that denies democracy at all in their work. However, in their work, they tell you that bad actors are the government. The government will spread propaganda, in which we have rebutted, right? Even, okay, let's say, sure, we concede to this. The government spreads propaganda. How is that exclusive to our side? How can they ensure that in their side of the house, right, they can hold the government accountable if they spread propaganda? Nothing is actually justified in their case. As my web speaker has already told you, right, the primary threat corrupting our global information ecosystem is not the overreaching of state actors. However, it is the proliferation of AI synthetic farms and those bots online. Yet the entirety of this point, right, which is one of the key reasons of today's status quo, the opposition just simply ignores it. There is zero engagement. Okay, coming from the web, however, it is still very lacking of justification. You cannot just leave this unresolved. The modern generative models, right, allow bad actors to mass produce thousands of these things with zero cost, unlike traditional static bots in which my DPM has already told you, meaning the system collapse of trust is fundamentally driven by them rather than government oppression. And also, there is a very recurring clash on the characterization of the demographic of US and China. They believe that the government are going to track you down, they're going to silence you, they're going to arrest you. Okay, sure. As my DPM and PM and DPM have already told you, right? Our policy actually replaces hidden, unregulated tracking with actually a strict, transparent system. We inside of our world is actually the world where the government has to keep their tracking opaque, more transparent, and they are the world who's trying to make this thing very opaque. As you have already stated, right, total online anonymity does not hide you from advanced state tools like in the status quo current right now. It only hides you from scammers, bot farms, and harassers from ordinary citizens. The government to ensure fairer elections, right, they will have a higher incentive in our world to ensure the safety of online and not to be corrupt because they want a fair election. They don't want their elections results to be affected by this misinformation. The only standing exclusive point coming from their side is that simply our worst case scenario. Sure, even if we concede to it, right, a corrupt state would in fact thrive in their world, a chaos status quo with total anonymity because it uses hidden state-sponsored bot farms, fake accounts, and like misinformation. Simply, social media is an international website. Literally, why this dual warrant will work in our world, right, is because that the US government and the China government do not grant them the power to arrest me, a user in Malaysia. An important clash of today's debate is the freedom of speech in democratic society. As my DPM already mentioned, right, in their state of utter chaos, it is harder to maintain these two very simple metrics. A further clash is the use of algorithm and executive overreach. In their side, they claim that we are so dystopian-like, where freedom is nothing, literally Big Brother is watching you. Yet, registry does not criminalize political assembly. Constitutional rights still protect your peaceful protests and stuff like that. In our work, we tell you that executive branch and ruling politicians do not hold the key to this database. They do not have the right to expose it. Let's put it on the scales, right? In terms of online users, right, they remain unprotected in your world against cybercrime and have no alternatives towards security in people online. In our world, we have provided facts, figures, and comparisons on why the solution on the majority risk only exclusively exists on our side. How privacy can go hand in hand with accountability and justice in our side. How the resource intensity of tracking digital footprint will be majorly reduced. Yet they have failed to prove their method on two things. They failed to prove the method for platforms and incentives for the government to address the misinformation. They fail to prove to us how they ensure true democratic integrity through their utter chaos. They have not just failed to meet their BOP, but to also challenge our teams. If you want to support true integrity, support type government. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for extraordinary debate. I'm really proud of you, and you can shake your hand. And yeah, so really proud of you to make this so far. So, because I and all the judges need to voting here, so I need everyone to leave this room.
All right, thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
Judge.
and see you